What is up, YouTube? Zach here from Spearos Kitchen, and today I've got another breakdown tutorial for you guys. I've got this beautiful hogfish here that I got out on my kayak the other day. I actually went out for grouper season looking for some black grouper. Didn't come across any black grouper, but I did come across this nice hogfish. So I'm going to do a breakdown tutorial for this for you guys, and I'll run the clip real quick so you can see how I got this hogfish, and then we'll jump right into the cuts. Alright guys, so the first thing you're going to notice about this fish, it did just recently come out of the cooler, so I tried to dry it off as much as I could with paper towels, just trying to get as much of that moisture out as possible. I also bled and gutted it as soon as I shot it. The gills are still attached. I didn't remove those yet. That's not really a huge deal right now, but let's go ahead and jump into the first cut here. So first thing I want to do is come in behind the peg fin, pretty typical. The collars on this fish are definitely a little bit bigger compared to the yellow jack that I did last week. So I'm not going to cheat. I'm actually going to come all the way up. You can kind of feel here around the head as to how much of that meat you can get. So first cut, I'm going to come in and go like this. And you kind of want to angle and get underneath the scales so you're not cutting through them. If you angle it enough, you'll actually just get right behind them and you'll get a little bit nicer cut. So cut all the way down through the bottom right here, and then that's going to pretty much outline our collar for us. So let me go ahead and do that. And kind of feel where the bones are so you know really how close you can get. And there are scales on this fish, which was not the case for the other ones that we had done, so we do need to worry about that too. So coming down, just making sure we're getting a good cut there, and that's going to be the first cut. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is pretty much outline our fillet, starting with the top, and then we're going to come in down here also. Not going in too deep. Really all I want to do is just start to get the base for that fillet, and there's actually a nice point right here that you can come in and just ride right up the backbone there. Make sure we don't get any of the scales on there. Same thing, just coming down, find that spot again. All the way down. Once you get to the tail, push all the way through like that, and just come out like that. Let's flip it around. Same thing on the bottom, and this will make it easier once we fillet it. When we come down, if you've already got this bottom piece cut, then you're really just taking meat off and it's going to come off a lot nicer. So push in here. And come out. And then now We're just going to come down from the top and just go right down towards the center spine there. Start to hear me hitting that backbone. If you're hung up here, come in with a serrated. This isn't a super sharp serrated, but it'll get the job done. And just cut straight down. That should open that up just a little bit. Now, once you get to the spine, you're going to want to go over it. And then when you get on the other side, come down. So you're making sure that you get that meat on the other side there. So if you look, I mean, we're getting pretty much as close to these bones as we can. But when you hit the spine, you're going to have to come up a little bit and then go back down to make sure you don't miss any of that meat on the other side. And nothing is going to go to waste because we're going to use the spine for some other stuff. But definitely, it's nice to get as much on the fillet as possible. And we're actually going to come over the ribs. Still hung up here just a little bit. Keep working our way down. Then you get a nice white fillet here. This is some of the whitest meat, probably of any fish, to be honest. It's like a super mild taste. It's really not fishy at all, so a lot of people like this. But this is our first fillet. All right, guys, so the next thing I'm going to do, I'm actually going to leave the ribs on this. Usually I would take these off of most fish, but what I'm going to make with this fish, I'm just going to leave those on, and we'll still utilize that meat. We're just going to do it in a different way than we typically do. So the next thing we're going to do is take off this left collar, and on the bottom here, usually when I gut my fish when I'm out spearfishing, I'll come up to about right here and just rip as much of the guts out as possible and stick my knife down in there and cut out. And I do that so this all stays together. So say FWC or whatever local law enforcement came and checked you, you would still have this fish like completely together. If you disconnect it from up here, I think you could run into some problems. So I usually keep that intact. But for now, we're going to come in, take a serrated, cut up towards this throat area right here, and just split these collars into two, and then try to detach it from down here. So we did that cut, and now sometimes you can do it with your hand. And we got that one off. So now we're going to come in, and there's a little bone right about here that we just want to get underneath. see here. This will come off. And just keep going right up towards the head. And that'll come off just like that. But definitely use a serrated knife so you're not messing up your nice fillet knife. But that is the first collar, and we'll clean this up a little bit. There's some dark meat in there, a little bit of bloodline, but we'll clean that up here in a little bit. All right, guys, so now we're going to repeat the process for our other side here. So we're going to flip it over. Same deal. We're going to come in, make this cut behind the pec fin, coming up towards the head. Try to get as close to that head as possible, and then come through the bottom. Now I shot this fish right about here, so we missed most of the fillet, which is good, but still caught a little bit right there. That's why you see just some red inflammation going on right there. So just want to make sure you get all the way down. And then find that spot again. And we're just going to start our outline. And same thing coming down. Once you get to the tail, tug all the way through, press down and go out. And same thing outlining on the bottom. There. And then now, same thing as before, we're just going to come down and just work our way down the fillet, taking our time. And once you get to that back bend, same kind of thing. You want to go over it. We're hung up here just a little bit. So cut through that. And we're going over the ribs again. All the way down. That's going to be our second fillet. So like I said before, here's a nice little nugget there. But all of this meat that's on this backbone, we're actually going to roast and use it to make probably some sort of pho or something along those lines, maybe ramen. Not 100% sure yet, but None of this meat on this backbone is going to waste, so we'll get to that here in a second. All right, guys, so the next thing I'm going to do is remove this right collar. And same kind of way before, we need to release it from down here first. So come in with a serrated, and that'll get it done. And then once we're down here, I mean, just try to get as much of this stuff that's attached off as possible. And again, take your serrated. You should just be able to cut right down to the backbone, and then have all that pull off. And then all of this we can just trim off. We'll go back and do that properly here shortly, but let me just get all this major stuff off. But that's definitely a decent collar, decent amount of meat that we're going to use for something. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do, I'm actually going to go back with a spoon and just get off all this meat as much as we can off of the frame. We are going to roast the frames and use them for something, but there's just too much meat left on here. This bottom piece right here, I definitely left a little bit on there, so we don't want to waste any of that, and it could be used for something good. So just come in with a spoon, like so. I wouldn't worry about the ribs too much. I'm actually going to remove those as well. But this will definitely make some sort of good topper for something. The bigger the fish, obviously, the more you get. So typically this is better done on a larger fish, but you still get some good pieces even with the small fish. All right, so that is one side. So not a bad amount. So let's turn it over and see what we've got on the other side. I put this paper towel down just because the fish was sliding around a little bit, just to help out. All right, and that is what we're left with. I mean, that's definitely enough for something. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do, I actually am going to remove these ribs, like I said. I'm just going to do that with a pair of kitchen shears here. So I'm going to go in from the bottom here, try and get in between the rib bones. And then we're just going to have to cut through all these. Because this isn't a big fish, I mean, it's going to cut through pretty easy, but on a bigger fish, you might have to do a little more work. And looks like we're kind of hung up here. So I'm just going to come in on the bottom like that. And that's definitely a good amount of meat. That'll definitely be really good marinated and baked. something along those lines. So we're definitely going to do something good with that. And then same thing on the other side. Just gonna come up. As close to that backbone as possible, the center spine. And then that is a nice chunk of meat right there as well. All right, so now we're just left with our fish frame with, I mean, pretty much as much of the meat as we could get off there. Like I said, we are going to be using this to make a broth, so I'm not too worried about getting every single little piece off there. And then we're also left with the head. So we're going to remove the head. And to do that, I want to find that little slit in the vertebrae. And if you can get in between there, it'll just cut right through. If not, you're still going to be able to cut through. I mean, this isn't a huge fish. But if you can find it, you should just be able to cut right through and then just go through all this extra down here. So they do have this pretty big piece right here. You're probably going to want to go around that because that's a lot to go through. But then we're left with this head. This is going to make a nice broth for us also. And this we can go ahead and split into two pieces just to make it easier when we do make a broth. If you have a big enough pot, you might not necessarily have to do this, but so then we've got these two pieces as well. So then all of this is going to make a nice fish stock for us. And like I said, I'm not sure 100% what I'm going to do yet. Probably pho is kind of what I'm leaning towards right now. So that is the head and fish frame. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do here is remove the skin off of our fillet. So if I could travel back in time, I probably would have scaled this fish like I do most of my snappers. Any fish that has bigger scales, mackerel, yellowjack, stuff like that, usually I don't scale just because the scales really aren't that big and it's not going to make a big mess. But like I said, if I could go back in time, I probably would have scaled this one because I want to utilize the skin as well and make some skin crisps. But the only problem is it's going to be tough to remove those scales when it's just the skin. But I'm going to figure out how to do it. And if I'm successful, then we'll see a recipe for it. So same way in my previous videos I've showed taking the skin off, I like to make a cut back in between the fillet and the skin just to give you a little something to grab onto. So if you come in, be careful when you're doing this because you are going back towards yourself. Try not to go in too close. But just enough so you've got a little something to grab onto, and then come down, hold on to that skin, and just work your way down. And then you are left with a skinless fillet. And there are some pin bones here. This meat is just so, I mean, there's like literally no bloodline. But there are some pin bones in here that we're going to come back in and remove here shortly. All right, guys, so same thing on the other fillet. Make that cut back towards you. Try not to go too deep, but deep enough so you're not missing that meat. And then get your nice hold. This skin isn't super thick, but it's definitely going to be tough to cut through, so you can kind of be more aggressive how you angle your knife down. But get that nice fillet off. Like I said, we'll remove the pin bones here in a second. And also, like I said, with this skin, I'm going to figure out a way to get these scales off. And then we're going to boil these. So any of this extra stuff is going to come off. This little piece here, if there's anything that you think you can cut off if you miss something, go ahead and cut that off. And add that to our scrap pile. You're not going to be perfect every time. I'm definitely not even close to perfect every time, but the nice part is you can go back and get most of what you missed. All right, so we're left with this, and I'm going to hold on to this because, like I said, we're going to do something special with this if I can figure out how to get these scales off. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is clean up these collars just a little bit, just getting any of this real nasty looking bloodline out. So these are really good marinated and either baked or thrown on the grill, which I'll probably do something along those lines with. The yellow jack that I did last week, we actually marinated the collars and used them in ramen, which turned out pretty good. And to be honest, that looks pretty good. Definitely good amount of meat, and all that comes right off. I mean, when you marinate this and bake it or grill it, all this meat is just going to come right off real easy. It's almost like, I don't want to say beef jerky because it's not chewy, but depending on what kind of marinade you use, it just gives it so much flavor. It just comes off like some juicy little nuggets. So we will do something with that. I'm going to put these back. All right, so our last order of business here is just going through and getting these bones out. And you can kind of feel where they start. So for this one, let me see, probably about right here. And it's hard to see because there's really not a bloodline. But if you just go in on either side of the bones there and just cut back to where you feel those bones start, just like that. And then we're going to trim this up just a little bit. The tail gets really chewy down here. There's a lot of gristle and connective kind of stuff going on in there. So we'll take some of that out as well. But that is one fillet. All right, and then same thing for this last piece. We got a little bit of skin on here, so I'm going to go cut this off as well. I mean, you can see how tough that would be. I mean, that's trying to cut through it with a knife. So I'm sure when you go to eat it, it's not going to be great. But same thing, feel where those bones are, feel where those bones start. And get on either side of them. Move any scales, if any, and that is your other fillet. All right, guys, so this is what we are left with. We've got our two fillets, which is typically what's taken from these fish. We've got all of our scraps that we went through and took off the backbone with a spoon, and just any other little bits that came off. We've got our two rib sections here that are going to be nice to marinate and grill. And then we've got our two collars that we're going to do the same with. And then we've also got our head and our fish frame that we're going to make a good broth with. I'm probably going to pair these up, the belly and collars, with the broth and make some sort of soup. And then the fish skin, like I said, I'm going to figure out a way. Um, like I said, if I could go back in time, I would have scaled the fish before. But because those scales are on, I'm going to have to get creative and figure out how to get those off. Um, and then probably going to do some sort of sushi topper or appetizer, something along those lines, with these scraps. And then the fillets, I haven't quite figured out what we're going to do with that, but hopefully it'll be something good. We don't have any hogfish recipes up on the website at this point by the time this video comes out, but when we do, I will put a link in the description for those. If you guys like this video, please comment, let me know what you thought. Like and subscribe if you want to see more. And if you haven't checked out the website yet, spearoskitchen.com, we've got a bunch of great stuff on there. We've got quite a few recipes from a bunch of different people all over the world, and we're slowly growing and growing. And I think it's going to be something pretty cool. So let me know what you guys think, and I will see you on the next one.